I get on my own, but I get along with the Lord. I go to a cabin at Mount St. Francis and I spend 3 days being quiet and reading, and I don't take any kind of multimedia with me. The difference now, and then also I've learned the value of being real with other people, because I grew up in a very kind of a really nice Christian home, and many of you have heard my story before, how when I was 13 I decided to get vodka and pink lemonade and mix it up together, you know. I thought that would be a good concoction. It was like that stuff tasted terrible, but I was going to drink it anyway. And you know, my dad's father was an alcoholic, so my mom and dad were sort of freaking out, like, oh no, our son's going to become an alcoholic. And they did the best they did with the tools that they had. But, you know, my father's father would go off for days and they didn't know where he was, and so my father would have to become the man of the house. And he just sort of, you know, he'd Nike it, you know, he just did it, so to speak. He became the top agent in State Farm in the state of Kentucky, in the top 50 in the United States. He was a producer, he was a great provider. He was at every ball game that I played. But he didn't know how to connect on an emotional level. He didn't know how to be real and to talk about what he's been through. It wasn't until I was on into my adult years, after I had gone through counseling, that I was able to have a conversation with him and help him to open up, and he shared part of his story with me. I know there was a moment in my counseling where I just broke down and cried because, and I said, I just wanted to know, I want to know my dad. Because I never really knew him. And I would say to you parents out there, or those of you that maybe are going to become parents, to allow your kids to know you. Allow them to know your story. Where you've made mistakes, and the challenges that you've had. The challenges that you still have. Because, you know, I grew up thinking my parents were perfect. And, you know, what did that do to me? Because let me tell you something, I was not perfect. I was very much imperfect. And, you know, and it gave me this unrealistic picture of what Christianity is. You know, did you know what it is? It's a lifelong process of becoming like Jesus Christ. So if you've blown it this week and you have failed, join the club. We are Christians in progress. We are on a journey, and we only accomplish it a little bit at a time. We are still very messed up, and the Lord loves us in our messed up. And we have to learn from our mistakes, and we have to try better next time. So I told you guys, you know, this past week I was going to fast multimedia. And so some of you know I teach at Indiana Wesleyan, and I was teaching Tuesday night, and also I'm teaching a Wednesday night class, which normally I don't teach 2 classes in the same month. And so I told my wife, I said, well, I'm going to pick up my... So I had a pretty good day, but my fast was this. I tend to not want to go to bed at night. Anybody else in the room like that? You know, it's like I don't want to go to sleep. You know what I've discovered? Well, here's what that's about. What that's about is not pacing yourself during the day. You are living such a driven lifestyle during the day, maybe doing a lot of good things, that when by the time 9 o'clock rolls around, you have to defrag, you have to disengage, you have to like come down. It takes you so long to come down, so you don't really, I mean, you really should go to sleep, but you don't want to. And so I'm learning that I need to pace myself better during the day. But so I was going to pick up my Subway sandwich before class started, because class starts at 6. And typically I'm running fast, right? And I'm in a hurry, and I'm trying to pace myself. Well, again, I mean, I paced myself pretty good on Tuesday, and I felt good about my day, but I didn't pace myself good enough to stop and get my Subway sandwich before class started at 6. So class gets out at 9:45, and I'm on my way home, and I get to Subway before they close at 10. And I come in the door and I said to my wife, well, so much for 10 o'clock going to bed and reading my Bible. Because my commitment was this: I was going to go to bed at 10, I was going to read my Bible, and I was not going to jump on my computer, I was not going to watch any TV, and I didn't do any of that. I ended up staying up till 2:30 in the morning, but I did get this done, my message for Sunday. So I felt it was somewhat productive. And then the next morning, it's like, hey, I didn't do what I told God I would do. And then Wednesday night, was almost like a little bit better. And I think I had one night, Thursday night, where I did that. Someone emailed me on Friday and said, would you just pray for me, because I was going to do this multimedia fast and spend time in prayer. And it's like I blew it the first time, and it's been downhill since. And I would just say, I felt like God was saying to me that He understands, and He just wants to encourage me. And I just feel like that if any of you are discouraged about your life in some way, God understands. He loves you. He meets you where you are. He wants to lift you up. He wants you to learn from whatever pattern that you're in, so that maybe a pattern can be broken. But don't be discouraged. That's the tool of the enemy. That's not God. God wants to encourage you and to love you. He said to one of His close followers, Peter, He said, Peter, literally Satan, how would you like for Jesus to say this to you sometime? Satan has asked that he might have you. He said, Satan has literally asked permission that he might separate you from me, just like wheat is separated from chaff, or chaff from the wheat. But I've prayed for you, Peter. And literally, he's saying this, and Peter, after you have blown it, because guess what? You're going to blow it. And after you have blown it, you're going to turn to me again, and then I want you to go and help other people. It's going to be okay. One of the biggest reasons we don't get over some of the stuff that we need to get over is because we don't think the Lord loves us. We don't think the Lord understands. We don't think the Lord meets us. He saw it coming. Before there was a word on my tongue, God, you already knew it. That's what it says in Psalm chapter 139. I still haven't gotten over it even now. I want to spend huge amounts of time on my own. Is there something that you have not gotten over in your life? Guess what? You're not going to get over it on your own. It says this, that the Lord sent them out 2 by 2. He sent 2 other disciples. He sent 70. The Lord chose 72 other disciples and sent them out 2 by 2 ahead of Him to every city and place that He planned to visit. So they were going kind of spreading the word that Jesus is coming. And they were connecting with people. And notice that He sent them out 2 by 2. Why didn't He send them out 1 by 1? Why didn't He just send you out by yourself? Because it's more difficult to be a Christian alone. It's harder. You're more prone to discouragement. There's no one to hold you accountable. It's kind of like when you went off to college. I know when I went off to college, I felt like, oh my gosh, my mom and dad aren't monitoring me. They don't know what time I'm getting in at night. I am a free man. And a lot of us are trying, we want it that way. We don't want to join a small group, or around here we call them spiritual hubs. We don't want to join a spiritual hub. You know why? Because now we're going to have to be accountable. Some of you know that I'm a recovering addict. And when I first started going to the 12-step group that I attended, people would say, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I'm recovering from whatever. You know what? We're all recovering from something. And they would say, my sobriety date is. And every time they would say that, it would just like tick me off. You know why? Because I didn't want to have a sobriety date. Because I could always turn to in a weak moment, I could turn to my outlet, my addiction that I didn't want to give up, and then I could start my recovery tomorrow. And sort of halfway feel good about that. And it was only until I was willing to be accountable to those guys in that room and say, hey, my name's Robert, my sobriety date is May 17th, what, blah, 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 blah. Was I ever going to get sober? I had to make a commitment, and I had to also be willing to be accountable. I had to be known and to know. The power of 2 is greater than the power of 1. I'm not saying that you don't know the Lord, and the Lord is not a part of your life. And if you die today, you're not going to wake up in heaven. I'm saying that if you keep trying to live an isolated Christian life and not let people really know you and you know them, you're limiting God's power in your life. So if you want an increase of His power in your life and His ability to take you to places that maybe you've only dreamed about, you need the power of two. And Jesus put it this way, and this is from the Message translation. He said, when two of you get together and make a prayer at all, and make a prayer on anything at all on earth, my Father in heaven goes into action. And when 2 or 3 of you are together because of me, you can be sure that I'll be there. You know, one time Jesus talked about people who believe for a while, they make commitments to God or to themselves, but they're never able to sustain it. And the number one reason is they're not connected. They're not connected. You know, if I were to encourage you to develop 2 disciplines that are the most critical, it would be these 2 things. You ready? Everybody listening? It's kind of like this moment where if you don't take anything else or get anything else, I want you to get this. Number 1, that you would have a withdrawing time with God. A quiet time. A date that you meet with Him. Did you know if you just, you know, a lot of people say, well, I don't know, somebody emailed me this past week, where do I start reading the Bible? And I said, well, read Psalms. If you read 5 Psalms and 1 proverb a day, read both books of the month. And that's actually something I'm trying to do, so why don't you do that? And then I said, well, why, and also read the book of John, because that's kind of like a real letter about life and the life that Jesus can give us. And there's a lot of really cool stories in there, and I like to sometimes put myself in that story. And here's what I believe, that you may feel like, you know what, I have no idea what I'm doing. But let me tell you something, if you come to the Lord like a little child and say, Lord, I just want to find you. And Lord, I just want to get to know you. You know what's going to happen? He's going to reveal Himself to you. He's going to get to know you. He already knows you. He's going to allow you to get to know Him. You're going to feel anxiety and worry lifted from your life. But it takes 30 days to form a habit, they say. So discipline number 1, the most important thing. I mean, I talk to people all the time who've been Christians for a long time, but they never have developed this practice of the quiet time. I talk to people in ministry who they're giving out to everyone else, but they're not taking time for the Lord to give back to them. And you know, when you first start off, it's like, you know, angels don't show up. Maybe angels never show up. Maybe dramatic things don't happen, but let me tell you something. It's like the practice of silence. I have learned to practice doing 20 minutes of silence a day, and I absolutely love it, and I don't get distracted. But when I first started doing it, let me tell you something. I've got ADD. My mind would run all kinds of places. You know, cheeseburger, you know, ribeye, espresso, you know, all kinds of stuff go through your head. And by practice, I'm talking about practice, man, practice. I'm not talking about the game. Everybody remember that clip? That was a joke, by the way. By practice, you start getting good at it. And I'm telling you, if you will have a time to withdraw from your activity, turn your cell phone off, don't take it with you, and spend 15 to 20 minutes alone with God. Reading His Word, being quiet, practicing the prayer of silence, talking to Him, but then closing your eyes and just being quiet. Giving Him access to your life, trusting that that's the best decision you could actually make. And to say, Lord, in this moment, whatever you want to do in my life, do it. I'm an open book. I'm accessible to you. Come access my life. Access my life. And then come out of that and talk to me. And then go about your day. Let me tell you something, it sets the whole day up. You know, a great Chinese missionary, Watchman Nee, he said this, the beginning of the day tells the rest of the day. Do you have that quiet time? And then the second practice is that you, outside of Sundays, you are connecting, you know, because it's about what happens the other 6 days a week. That you have some time that you come together with friends, maybe over food, but then you talk about what's God doing in your life. You talk about the message. You know, we're getting ready to start a series with 50 churches around the country called Journey Home. And it's about becoming the adopted child of God. What does it look like when you're living as an adopted child versus living as an orphan who's not in an adopted family? And we're going to have small groups that we're launching, people that are lead hosting groups. My wife and I will be hosting a group. There'll be a group hosted here on Sundays after the service. There'll be about 7 groups, I think, that are going to be hosted. But you know what? You could form your own too. Because the most essential thing is that you grab someone, even just 2 people, and you spend some time, an hour out of your week, talking about what God's doing in your life. And how can I support you? You know, Erwin McManus, who pastors Mosaic out in L.A., he said this: our freedom must never be about us and us alone. Freedom is the gift of serving others out of love. There's a really cool story where Moses, in the Bible, Moses is holding up his hands and he's praying. And actually what's happening is the nation of Israel is at war. And he is praying for victory. And as long as his hands are upheld, I don't have time to go into all the details of the story, but as long as his hands are upheld, God is giving them victory. But then what happens is he starts getting weary, he starts getting discouraged, he starts getting tired, and he starts putting his hands down, and then the enemy starts to win. And so the story goes like this, that Aaron, who is his spiritual friend, comes to his side and holds up Moses' hands. Do you have somebody like that in your life that can hold your hands up? Do you have somebody that you're helping to hold their hands up? Because our freedom must never be about us and us alone. Freedom is the gift of serving others out of love. I love what it says in 1 John. It says this: that which we have seen and heard and we proclaim to you, so that you too may have fellowship with us. And indeed our fellowship is with the Father, with His Son, Jesus Christ. And we are writing these things to you so that our joy may be complete. Notice he says this, he says, we, not me, are writing these things so that our joy, not my joy, may be complete. You know, it's not about me, it's not about you, it's about us. One of the most moving passages in the Bible, and it's translated in the Message translation, it says this: if you've gotten anything at all out of following Christ, if His love has made any difference in your life, if you have a heart, and if you care, then do me a favor. Love each other. Be deep-spirited friends. So everybody look at me for a moment. Let me ask you this question. If you say you're a follower of Jesus Christ, does it include connecting with others in real and authentic ways? We're going to invite Megan Oder up to the stage, and she's going to share a little bit about, she's one of our hub leaders, and she's going to come and talk a little bit about what connecting with other people in her life looks like. Let's welcome Megan. Come on up. Megan works at Cycle Gear, right? You need a mic. So if you ride, she's the person to see. So you grew up in a pastor's home, and you got to see firsthand what small groups in action or spiritual hubs in action look like. So tell us a little bit about that.
It's on.
Okay, here we go. So my father's a pastor, and so I grew up in and around churches my whole life. When I was from about 2 years old, through junior high, we lived in Indianapolis, and my parents were in a small group. They called them K groups at that point. That whole time they were in the same small group. There were 4 couples, they all had kids about the same age. We were all pretty similar, but every Monday night, my whole life growing up, they met for Bible study. And they would rotate at different people's houses, and they would meet first and have some dessert and just talk about life, and then they would talk about Bible stuff, whatever that would be. And they were committed to it. It wasn't just a casual, hey, we have a lot going on this week, we're not going to go. It was every Monday night, no matter what was happening, no matter what work was like, no matter what school was like, no matter what kid activities we had. We didn't do those on Mondays because that was our parents' night to have a Bible study.
It's kind of like, I'm thinking about that verse where Jesus said that where your treasure is, that's where your heart is going to be. And I think that one of the things that we're praying that we'll get across is what a treasure other people can be in our life. And the treasure we can be to them as we come together and share our lives with each other. So.
That's absolutely true. Because of that time when they spent together every week, and they spent that time being together, focusing on God and focusing on something more than themselves, they created deep friendships that still last. And then when tragedy happened within our group and within our families, we knew that we weren't alone, and there were always people that would have our back. The first people that we would call when something happened would be the people in our small group. The first people to show up at our house when we needed them would be the people from our small group. And that was true all the way around. When we did it for them, they did it for us. And we wouldn't have been able to get through the times in our lives that happened if it were not for those people and the commitment that they showed to each other because they were committed to God. And I think that's where the important thing was. They weren't just committed to each other because they were friends. They were committed to each other because God wanted us to be committed to each other. We experience God through other people. We can't do it just on our own reading the Bible because God is real and He acts through real people. And that's what the Bible teaches us. And if we don't allow God to work through other people, we're limiting what God can do. And that's just a tragedy on our part.
You went through a difficult thing growing up physically. Well, tell us a little bit about what happened.
When I was in 6th grade, I was diagnosed with bone cancer in my mouth. And it was very much a shock to everybody. This cancer is not something that's prone in our family. And through that, our group was right next to our family the whole time, every step of the way, through doctor's appointments and times in the hospital. They brought food to us when we didn't have time or the energy to cook. And I know that our family would be different without them. Our family is stronger now because of what happened, and we're stronger because we had the support of people around us who loved us and who loved us because God loved us.
You had a time in your life where I know that you said that the group that your parents had, there were kids that were your age and you all kind of connected with each other, but you had a time in your life where connecting in a spiritual hub was not a priority. Why?
We moved from Indianapolis to Chicago, and I was upset about that, and I didn't want to be there, and I didn't make friends at the church that we were going to, and so I just kind of shut myself off to it, and that lasted through a lot of college, and I went to a Christian college out in California, and I was in Bible classes, and I had a church that I went to, but I wasn't really very connected there, and a lot of that carried over from the anger from high school. But I had a pretty good group of friends, and we decided that we were going to cook dinner every Thursday night because we were hungry and we were poor. You can't make a good dinner like one person on a college budget. But if you pitch in half a dozen people, you can make a 5-course dinner. So every Thursday night we did this, and we cooked it. We called it family dinner because none of us had family close by. And every Thursday night we met for 3 years and cooked dinner, no matter what was going on. We always rearranged our work schedules around it, we rearranged our classes around it, and it was very much a small group. And none of us at that point were ready for the Bible study part of it, but it doesn't mean that God wasn't there. Because we were all Christians, our conversations often turned to spiritual matters, how we were doing with life. We had lots of theological debates about different things because we were pretty different, but it helped reinforce the bonds and get people to connect with each other. And we were able to connect and commit to each other because that's what we knew we were supposed to do.
What's been the biggest change? You have a small group in St. Matthews, right?
Yes.
And y'all meet Wednesday nights?
We have been meeting Wednesdays. We're going to switch it to Tuesday nights this week. the hardest part about it is just doing it. It's easier to do nothing than to do anything. And especially after work, like we meet on Tuesday nights, so we all have work during the day, and we come home, and we're tired. I'm tired. There's lots of nights when I don't want to see other people because I've seen people all day, and I don't want to talk to people because I need some time to be on my own and decompress. But I've committed to doing the group, and so I do it, and I go, and I meet with the people in my group, and I've never once been sad that I've done that. I've never once been in the group or finished with that group and thought, man, my time would have been better used watching the TV, or my time would have been better used sleeping. There's always a reward for going, and that reward is getting to connect with God and seeing how God is acting in other people's lives. And sometimes you can't identify what God is doing in your own life because you're too close, but you can see what God is doing in other people's lives, and that will give you encouragement to realize that God is doing things in your own life as well.
So what would you want to say to people that are sitting out here that maybe have never taken this step? They come to church, but they are not part of a small group or a spiritual hub, and they're considering it. What would you say to them?
I would encourage everybody to do it and be committed to do it. You can't do it halfway. You can't say, yeah, I think that would be fun to do, and if you get to that day you don't go because you're tired or you have another engagement. You have to go. You have to do it consistently, and while you're doing it consistently, God will show up, and He'll show up in your life, and He'll show up in the people around you, and you will be more fulfilled for it. But you have to commit to do it all the time, whether or not you want to do it. It's not an emotional thing of whether I feel good about it or if I feel up to it. You give your word to do it. You commit to it. You commit to God to working through your life through other people, and He will do so.
Would you mind just praying for people sitting out here today?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Dear God, thank you for this time that we get together and study your word and be surrounded by other people who are like-minded. I know that it gives me strength to do so and to be able to be surrounded by people that have the same outlook and views that I share. And I pray that people will be encouraged to join into a smaller group of people, whoever that may be, where they can be focused on you and be together and committed as a group to focus their lives and that part of their lives on you. And I know that when they do that, you will show up and you will let them experience you in ways that they would have never thought possible, with relationships with each other and with you. So please give people the courage to do so and to step up, and give me the courage to do what I need to do to help with that. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you, Megan. Just let me tell you, too, that Megan is doing a 4-week In the Know group. I'm not sure when she's going to kick it off, but it probably will be maybe in a couple of weeks. But she's going to review these 4 essential practices that we're talking about in this series. How to read the Bible, how to get to know the Bible, what is, how to use it in my life, how to have conversation with God, number 2, how to connect with others in real and tangible ways, number 3, and then number 4, developing your heart to serve, discovering what your spiritual gift is. So she's going to be leading a 4-week group. Her information is up here. She'll be at our info hub after the service today. If you're interested in finding out more, you can connect with her. So what are some practical next steps as we finish up today? So if you say you're a follower of Jesus Christ, it doesn't include connecting with others in real and tangible ways. How can you take some practical next steps? Number 1, prioritize it. Prioritize it. Decide, there's the same amount of time during the week for all of us. Decide when is going to be that time that you can connect. My wife and I have a group on Thursday nights. There's groups I think they're going to be on Friday night. There's one that's going to be on Sunday night. There's one that's going to be after the service on Sunday. If none of those work for you, start one. You know, get one other person in your life and form a group and say, hey, we're going to do this. And for 6 weeks out of your life, come together and see what kind of difference it makes. That's the commitment we're asking you to make. Prioritize it. Number 2, Nike it. Just do it. And one of the ways that you can Nike it today is when you came in, you got a program, right? So there is a Connect card in there, and what you can do on that Connect card is you can say, count me in. That's what you can do. Everybody say, count me in. Yeah, you can write on that Connect card, count me in. If you're ready to say, you know what, I'm going to prioritize this. And here's what I mean by that. I'm either going to join one of the groups that are going to be offered, or I'm going to form a relationship with someone else, or 3 or 4 other people in my life, and I'm going to help carry the conversation. Because we've got books that have been ordered, and we're going to have them available September the 30th. And then October the 7th is the first message in the series. So that week of the 8th or the 7th, starting the 7th, after the service, through the rest of the week, will be the first conversation, and the books will guide you in the process. So you can pick up your copy on the 30th, you can pick up on the 7th. We're having a little cookout here after the service on October the 7th. And so we hope that October and on into the 1st of November will be a time where we're really connecting in ways that we've never done before. Because it can change your life. And it can change someone else's life. And then realize that you're shortchanging God's power by not including the power of 2 in your life. And you're shortchanging others. And I guess I would say another practical next step would be this. Stop making excuses. Stop making excuses. Just let all that go and realize that God has called us to live in community together. He's called us to do this thing of relationship with Him together. You know, it's interesting that whenever Jesus would give feedback, it doesn't mean that He doesn't want you to go and have a one-on-one relationship with Him. But when His disciples said, Lord, would you teach us to pray? He taught them this prayer called the Lord's Prayer, and He said this, sure, when you pray, pray this way, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who have sinned against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Why did He say, pray, my Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. You know, give me this day my daily bread. Because in that culture that Jesus was in, their spiritual life was very much about community. When they didn't have their own Bible. So when the Bible was read, they would all come together and the rabbi would read from the scroll. You know, we have reversed it. We have gone to an independent Christianity. So I would say this. I love to be alone with the Lord by myself. I love to go to the cabin. But I love my small group. I love my spiritual hub. I love the people that have made a difference in my life. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be where I am today. God used the power of 2. And for so long in my life, I didn't know that. You know, if we're going to experience the power of 2, here's what we need to know is that your pain is my pain, and my pain is yours. Your addiction is my addiction, and my addiction is yours. Whatever has you discouraged, guess what? That has me discouraged. And whatever has me discouraged, I hope it has you discouraged. And together with Jesus at the center, we're going to find a way out. You know, one of my students wrote me a letter this week because I shared in class my story. And she said, you know what, I always resented addicts because my husband of 12 years was an addict and I tried every way in the world to save him and I couldn't. And he never changed, even though he hit bottom every time. She said, your story was so encouraging to hear how God turned your life around. And you know what? He did. And He did it that first night that I walked into a counselor's office. And I was scared to death because I was going to have to be known. I was going to have to take my guard down. I was going to have to open up my heart's door, and I was going to have to let that counselor see all the ugly stuff in my life that I was hiding, that I didn't want other people to see. Because I grew up in that Christian home where image was everything. And I began to let down the image. And I began to say, hey, I'm not so perfect after all. And you know what? It was okay. And through that process, I became the kind of person who's vulnerable. I became the kind of person that I can get up and talk about myself like this and be open, and it's okay. And I began to break the addiction of being a people pleaser. And I will tell you that addiction is still something that still troubles me. Because practically every Sunday I battle that addiction. After everybody's gone, I stand in this room and I pray for you. Sometimes I even go to every seat and I pray where people sit. And I think to myself, did I do a good enough job? Are they going to come back? And the Lord reminds me, hey, it's not about you. It's about what I'm doing. You're only the messenger. So I've laid the message out for you, and I've shared my life, and Megan has shared part of hers. And now it's up to you to take this message and say, you know what, I want to begin to practice. Maybe you already are, but I want to continue to practice, or I want to really start practicing this essential practice number 3. And if you've not been doing it, here's how you can do it, just to be accountable. I mean, maybe you're going to end up being involved in some other church. That's fine. But you can write your name down on that Connect card, and you can say, count me in. We'll hold a book for you. And we're going to kick off this series the end of September. We'll have our books passing out in the 1st of October. We're going to celebrate with a cookout, and we're going to get this thing rolling. And I think lives are going to be different, or lives are going to be transformed. So let's pray, then Rhonda's going to come up and make a few closing announcements. Lord, I pray for every person in this room. And I pray that you would help them to move, and I pray you would help me to move, to being connected with other people. That we'd move out of our isolation, we'd move out of hiding and pretending, and we would find the joy of having other people in our life that we can do this thing called a relationship with God with. I pray that you'll help us to make that commitment today. In Jesus' name.